of all, I think your analysis was very straight line. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing frogs.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go along that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they were talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD.
I got that.
Calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Come on, Lou Taylor. You got script. I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
yes,
but an erratic detective,
Rodriguez.
Mickey Rodriguez.
Why an African slap an Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? No, Gildarie, you deal with that. You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Gildarie, you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that. Hi there. Happy Ramadan. This is the beginning of the month of Ramadan. Thanks for being with us. Of course, this is the Freddie Kissoon show with co-host Leonard Gildarie and Akash Prasad. As I said before, this is the beginning of the month of Ramadan. So it's only appropriate, relevant, and important that we start with life in the world, life in Guyana, in general, as it relates to the world of Islam. This evening, we're going to be discussing a tragedy in the world that perhaps outside of the two world wars and slavery is one of the tragic events in human history. And our panelists will discuss why this is such a tragedy in world history. Our guests this evening are people with vast experience in Islamic theology, the Islamic culture, Islamic philosophy. One of them have written 2 books in relation to Islam. So let's introduce our guests, and I think one of the programs we did, I put my foot in my mouth. I started the program without saying good night to my co-host, Akash Prasad. So better late than never, Akash. Thanks for being here.
Ready.
Our guest this evening is HASEEB YUSUF. Let me tell you a little bit about HASEEB YUSUF. I taught him 2 philosophy courses at UG when he was doing his degree there. After graduation, he became the principal of one of Guyana's largest patronized school, the Islamic school in East Street. Everybody knows that, the ISA school. He was the principal for that school, which is both nursery, primary, and high school. From there, he left Guyana and went to the Middle East, where he studied Islamic theology, Islamic philosophy in Egypt and Saudi Arabia. Brother HASEEB YUSUF currently resides in Saudi Arabia and is on a visit to Guyana. He told me involved a prolonged visit to his country. The other guest this evening is a man with an interesting career, more than 30 years as an investigative journalist with the Canadian  His name is NAZIM, and Mr. BAKSH is perhaps the only person in Guyana and the Caribbean who, because of his journalistic work, was allowed visit to the infamous Guantanamo jail in Guantanamo on the outskirts of Cuba. Mr. BAKSH went there 4 times in his capacity as a journalist with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. He has written 2 books on Islam. So we're going to have a packed night because this may be our 4th program. I can't remember, I'm getting old. Or our 3rd program on this historic tragedy of genocide in Gaza. And every day it takes a more horrific turn. We've been discussing this thing since October when Hamas went into Israel and unjustly slaughtered more than 1,000 Jewish people. We cannot support that. But the Israeli reaction shows the true nature of the Jewish state, and it shows the true nature of Western civilization. We will come, hopefully in the program, to what the German government had to say about its support for Israel. And when you hear what the German government said in its support for Israeli genocide in Gaza, your skin has to go. So we will have a packed program this evening in which 2 experienced men in Islamic theology, and one of them vastly experienced in journalism, will discuss one of the saddest tragedies in human history, the extermination for genocidal reason of 31,000 Palestinians. Of that 31,000, about roughly 22,000 have been women and children. So without further ado, I've already done my protocol in relation to Akash. I'd like to thank Mr. BAKSH and my friend HASEEB. We normally go alphabetically, so we will start with Mr. BAKSH, and he will tell us a little bit of his history. Then we go to HASEEB about what he was doing in Egypt and Saudi Arabia, and then we flow freely into genocide in Gaza. Mr. BAKSH?
Well, thank you very much, Freddie and Akash, for having HASEEB and I here on this program this evening. And I want to start by saying happy Ramadan, Ramadan greetings to the Muslims of Guyana. I left Guyana 4 to 4 years ago, and I've never had a Ramadan in Guyana since. So this is my very, very first Ramadan in Guyana in over 4 decades. So I'm very humbled and happy to be with my community once again after such a long time. I left Guyana when I was 18 and I studied journalism, and I spent 33 years at the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation producing some excellent journalism, documentaries mostly. As you said, I've been to Guantanamo in the American prison in Guantanamo 4 times to cover the case of Umar Khadr, one of the youngest detainees, or if you can call him that, prisoners at Guantanamo, who ended up getting settled with the Canadian government for $10.5 million because the government abandoned him to the Americans. He was tortured and mistreated in so many ways. I've also visited Israel, Palestinian territories, the occupied territories, particularly not Gaza, but the West Bank, Ramallah, and East Jerusalem. Spent a lot of time there and won an award for my interview with Benjamin Netanyahu in 1999. And so as a segue of getting into it, I'm looking forward to sharing my perspective with you and to answer some questions that you might have. I feel I agree with you. This is one of the most horrific, genocide that we're seeing unfold, and we can talk a bit about why it's a genocide and why we should care as Guyanese people and people of the world, why we should be concerned, and is there anything we could do about it? And so I look forward to sharing my perspective with you, and thank you very much.
Okay, before we go to HASEEB, HASEEB brought this for us. My earpiece is falling off. I'll put it back on just now. HASEEB has brought this for us. Palestine. And so and then he brought this for me. 100 years war in Palestine. So 100 years war in Palestine. You're quite free to call me if you want to borrow it and read it. My number is 614-5927. My email is Fred Kissoon, one word, at yahoo.com. So, HASEEB, thanks for this. I'm a historian and I teach philosophy, and what has happened in Gaza has really stunned me and lacerated my psyche. But after you left UG, became the principal of the Islamic school in East Street, how did you find your way to the Middle East?
So that's quite interesting. So, Freddie, I'm very pleased to be here. You have been one of my favorite lecturers at the University of Guyana, and we shared many years of friendship, discussing all kinds of topics. I can remember you even invited me to do tutorials with the students at the university, and the experience in philosophy, studying politics and history, really enriched our perspective, our cosmology, or worldview, and we see things outside of our culture or our own world. We see far beyond that, and so I want to thank you for all the things that you have done, not only for me, but for hundreds of Guyanese students in politics and history. And until now, you're still inspiring, thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, I should say, outside of Guyana. We have been reading your pieces, your articles, your in the Kaishore, in the Stabroek, people have been following you in Saudi Arabia. The Guyanese community there have been following your work. And so I'm very pleased to be associated with the program. I knew that a person like you would be very current, and Gaza can't miss anybody except, what was happening. In fact, it has exposed the mainstream media, and it has shown the double standard and the hypocrisy of the Western media, and how it is, pandering to the sponsors. So, yes, after my accident, I used to be the head of the Guyana Islamic Trust also. For many years, over 10 years, I have been the head of the Guyana Islamic Trust, the Murshid at the time. And then I became the principal of the Isa Islamic School. It's really the Ibn Sina Academy, but commonly known as Isa Islamic School. And, in 2013, I had this very serious accident in Berbice. And I said, if I live, then I'm going to go to Saudi Arabia and to live with my son. He has been living there, and the year before I was with him, and he was insisting, why don't you come and live with us in Saudi Arabia? We are in the holy city of Makkah, and everybody, millions of people around the world will cherish that idea of living in Saudi, in the holy city of Makkah, in fact, or in Medina. But I told him I was so busy, and I came back, and 2 months after that, I had this very serious accident in Berbice. We were actually preparing for a huge convention with one of the sheikhs from Canada was coming. So I happened to survive. And I said, okay, I'm going to go live in Saudi Arabia for some time in the holy city for the rest of my life. So I have been there. I had the beautiful opportunity, actually, to reach this amazing friend who says he's my big brother. And he gave me sponsorship to be in Saudi Arabia. He's what you call kifala. He became my kafil. So I have been living there for 10 years. And like Nazim, this will be my 4th Ramadan after 10 years being in Guyana. So I really cherish this, the opportunity to be with my brothers and sisters here, to observe the holy month of Ramadan And what bears on our mind in this Ramadan? Every Ramadan we have been having crisis upon crisis. But this, I think, is the biggest crisis as a Muslim ummah, as the Muslim nation that we are facing, which is the genocide in Gaza. So while we'll be observing Ramadan, all of our hearts will be very heavy with what's happening in Gaza. And of course, this is a time of prayers, it's a time of supplication, it's a time of fasting, it's a time of spiritual rejuvenation. So it's a moment really that we would use to highlight and to bring to fore the injustices that is taking place in Gaza. This is a matter of injustice. It doesn't matter because the Gazans are Muslims, the Palestinians are Muslims, well, the majority, because we still have, at this point, should be emphasized, that we have a sizable community of Christians who are also in Gaza and in Palestine, and who have been facing the same treatment from the occupation forces. So that's my history. So since then, I have been in Saudi Arabia. Like my predecessors, your good friend, Sheikh Azam, Allah yarhamhu, we have been studying traditional Islamic sciences, looking at the jurisprudence, Islamic jurisprudence, the Islamic theology, looking at the Hadith and the Quran, and trying to understand the relevance of the Quran and the Hadith in our lives in the modern times. And we have also been exposed to the studies of Arabic language and Islamic philosophy and education. So before that, I had studied in Arabic in Egypt. And so it was really refreshing to have all of the time in the world, because, in Saudi Arabia, unfortunately, you can't be an activist. It's a different society. And I think, we all know what's happening in Saudi Arabia. There is no free press. There is no
you have to be careful. You have to go back there. I'm sure these programs are being monitored. I don't want you to get into any problem in Saudi Arabia.
But these things are well known. So you can't be an activist, so to speak, for whatever cause. And so we have had all of the opportunity.
Incidentally, I visited HASEEB in Mecca recently. I was there for the Umrah, which is the lesser pilgrimage. And when you go to the Haram, which we say where the Kaaba is, or in Medina, on Friday prayer, most people who are there, Arabic is not their first language. And so you'd be listening to the Imam in the Friday sermon, and he'd be making a supplication, which culminates in the sermon that he would give. He would end it with a prayer. And he would be praying for regular thing, goodness, forgiveness, mercy, and so on and so forth. And when he got to Palestine, to pray for Palestine and the people of Palestine, there is a palpable roar of Ameen, amen, right? So be it, calling on God. I mean, the whole place comes alive. And we're talking about close to probably over 1 million people, all saying Ameen at the same time, which shows that the Muslim world, even though they are not there for political activism and so on, there is this religious response, which is sort of a deep pain and trauma that the entire Muslim world is feeling at this point in time for what they're seeing happening in Gaza and the West Bank and East Jerusalem.
Akash?
Well, assalamu alaikum, gentlemen. It really is
just let me cut you, in case our viewers don't know, Akash Prasad is a Hindu name. Akash is a Hindu name. Akash Prasad is a practicing Muslim.
So, and on that note, Freddie and gentlemen, I'll do something tonight on the show that I've never done in public before, and it is in honor and gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I'm going to wear this head, yes, okay, for the first time in public. And my questions to you tonight will go deep a little bit into the relevance of Ramadan and its spiritual aspects, and also and to touch a little bit of the Qadr of Allah and what is happening in Gaza. Because I'm a firm believer in the Qadr of Allah, even to the point that we are sitting here right now because this was predestined. That is how deep I am. let me first start by asking you, though, if you believe that this is the qadr of Allah, to both gentlemen, and also what is our purpose in all of this, and how do we respond if this is the qadr of Allah, please?
Well, the Palestinians themselves, the people who are having bombs rained down upon them, who have lost their children, their grandchildren, according to Amnesty International and various other human rights organizations, about 80 families have been completely wiped out. That's over 2,000 people, just adding up the members of those 80 families. We're talking about the Shatley families. We're talking about the Nofal families. We're talking about, these are prominent families, and families are the building blocks of society. So when you have 80 families, grandfather, grandmother, father, son, daughter, grandchildren, everybody's gone. There might be one person living in that family, right? And these people, even with all of this horrendous killing and death happening around them, say one thing: this is the will of God. This is the will of God, that this is happening to us at this time. Whatever God's will is, we accept. And so someone was on a show recently and asked me, why do people in Gaza say Allahu Akbar? Why do I keep hearing that all the time? Allahu Akbar, God is great, God is the greatest. And it is because they're accepting this will, the will of God, that this is happening. It's total submission to the will of God, right? That nothing is going to happen to you if God didn't will it to happen. Whatever the reason this tragedy is unfolding is, God knows, but we accept it. And for us here in Guyana and across other parts of the world that might be listening to the show or might be tuning in, we are witnessing with our eyes this death and destruction that is taking place in Gaza and the West Bank and East Jerusalem. We're seeing it, right? And so that is a tragedy on us too, because we have to witness something that is happening and we're unable to do anything about it. As HASEEB said, in this month of Ramadan, we can pray. We pray a lot, we pray in the morning, we pray in the evening, we pray during the day, right? To lift our hands and ask God, to relieve the people of this tragedy and this death and destruction that is taking place on an ongoing basis every minute of the day. And now there's starvation and disease and so on and so forth is going. And we are witnessing this, and we are helpless. So whom do we call to? We call on God. We call on Allah, on supplication, and a sincere heart that pleads to God for relief.
HASEEB, you want to follow, but before that, I don't want to miss this, because when we start with Gaza, the time is 9:30 is going to reach. Is it in Canada, because you just came from Canada, I know in Canada you cannot form an association or organization to boycott Israeli goods and products. Is it illegal, as it is in Europe and the United States, to say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free? Is the Trudeau government...
No, they haven't circumscribed that particular statement, because, Israel coined the term in the first place, right? They from the river to the sea is something that they coined. Is
Yeah. That's quite...
that's going back.
That's quite known now that it... Right. Okay.
Yeah. So but you're right about divestment, that you can't in public.
That's illegal in Canada.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. He is from Canada. I don't want to get Akash into any problem with the US, but you and I can say from the river to the sea,
yes,
Palestine will be free.
Yes.
I don't want him to say it or him to say it, but you and I can say it. Yeah. Good. So let's say.
No, I can say it too.
Oh, it's not illegal in Canada.
No, I'm Guyanese. I'm in Guyana. I'm talking to you. Where are we?
But I don't want him to say it, because I'm sure the U.S. Embassy looks at these programs, right?
But Freddie, saying from the river to the sea, Palestine would be.
I don't want to get you into any problem with the U.S. Embassy.
I understand, but we share it's a burning something burns in my heart, and I feel strongly about it too. That there's nothing wrong with saying that the people.
Why I said that?
Yeah,
is,
I understand.
Why I said that is because I think prior to genocide in Gaza, I think prior to that, I don't want to take up much time. This is a point I'm going to make if I'm asked to be a speaker at the Palestinian rally on Sunday. Square the Revolution at 8 p.m.
8 a.m.
8 a.m.
8 a.m. Next week. So before this Gaza thing, before the Gaza genocide, sorry, I shouldn't say Gaza thing, before the Gaza genocide, I believe there was some respect for the Western press. And the people of the world still felt that there was some democratic semblance of the people who colonize us and afterwards present themselves as democratic. And since independence of the colonies of the 60s, these people have presented themselves to us as democratic nations and have unleashed the blueprint for us to follow. Free and fair elections, free media, free and fair elections, accountability. But what the West has done, these people are supporting governments. You have people in leaders of some of the biggest and most important countries flying over to talk to a criminal like Netanyahu. And then these people will come and lecture to us when it's World Press Day, when it's World Democracy Day. I want to say this before we hand over to both of you to take us through the hour. I want to get this in. I am not supposed to take up so much time, but I have to get this in. Germany officially acknowledged that it committed genocide in Namibia. Germany acknowledged that it committed genocide against the Jews. Do you know Germany is refusing to categorize genocide in Gaza? And this is what the German government said. You better hold your seat because you're going to fall down. The German government said Israel is German reason of state. When you translate that philosophically, Germany exists for Israel. So you imagine you have one of the most important countries in the world for the third time supporting genocide. Sorry about all of that. HASEEB, you want to take
Yes, just a brief point. Qadar is indeed very central to our belief system. And the fact that we resign ourselves, we are Muslims because we resign ourselves, we submit ourselves to God. And, you know, He has His plan and He has His design for us. There are certain things that we never choose for ourselves. And, you know, we don't have the ability to do that. For example, those who are living in Gaza, in Palestine, they didn't choose to just, you know, live in Palestine. This is their land. This is where they were born. This is where God ordained that they will, you know, live their lives. This is what is happening to them. And they say, Alhamdulillah. You know, we thank God for whatever is His decree, whatever His will. And we are going to be resilient. We are going to be patient with the decree of God. And this is central to the teachings of Islam. One of the most important quality in our religion is patience. And Ramadan will teach us a lot of patience. This is one of the main lessons of Ramadan, which is to develop patience and to be happy with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, you know, we have to look at the broader context of this whole situation in Gaza and in Palestine as it relates for the struggle for justice and the struggle, if you want to put it in verse, the struggle for against injustice and against apartheid, against, you know, all of these things that are very negative to human development and human civilization. So that is my point on Qadar. Whatever Allah has decreed in His divine knowledge and in His divine wisdom is good for us. And as Muslims, we know that, you know. We know the famous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that there is, for the believers, there is good in everything. And so the Palestinians know, those who are being killed in our religion, in this unjust war against women and children, are considered to be martyrs. In the Arabic media, they don't use the word those who are killed. They use the word shuhada, shaheed. We have, 300 shuhada. We have 200 shuhada. So they use the word shaheed, martyrs. So they regard every single child, every single man, every single woman who has been unjustly slaughtered in Gaza as martyrs. And that's a realm not of this world. The shaheed is not of this world. The shaheed is of the hereafter, the other realm that Muslims look forward to and look for. To be a shaheed is to actually attain the highest state after the prophets in the world of the afterlife. And so for them, there is this amazing story in Gaza. There was this mother, Freddie, listen to this, how much love she has for her children. And they have been separated for a brief moment. And then the child is running towards her for comfort and for security. But before he can reach the mother, and the mother is there just hoping that he will reach her, the bomb came and the child was killed instantly, decimated, destroyed. And she, like the mother, that feeling of that mothers are enduring all of the time in Gaza. They are now seeing their children starving to death, newborn babies, no milk to give that child. And she is there, she can't breastfeed because there's no milk. The child can't get anything from her. And there's no milk to give the child. So ultimately, the child is waiting for death. This is the starvation that is happening there. And so those mothers are, having to endure that, to see their children dying in front of them for starvation. So this mother is there, and this child open eye and is running to mama, and he's killed. So her heart was completely broken. She just wanted to know what pain my child felt at the point of death. And then she had this amazing dream the night, or whatever time she had this dream, that he said, Mama, don't be worried. I saw myself running into Jannah. I was running into heaven. I didn't feel any pain. All I saw is like there was a quick flip, from this life, this realm, to the realm of the afterlife, where this child saw himself running into Jannah. And this is the end of all of the shuhada. They are all going to be in paradise before the last drop of blood bled from their body. And so, it's for us in Islamic theology, it's the ultimate victory or the ultimate success. So Qadr is,
and the ultimate destination.
And the ultimate destiny. Yeah.
Nazim, I hope the government and the university are listening or watching, and if they aren't, word will get back to them that they have a Guyanese who have spent 33 years with the leading broadcaster in Canada, Canadian Broadcasting Union, and you went on behalf of that company in journalistic capacity to cover Guantanamo. You surely have a lot to offer journalism, and I can tell you, journalism is not in a nice state in Guyana. But what was it like? How did you feel? What does one outside of that ideological space in Guantanamo and what the Americans felt and were doing there, how does a normal human being feel when they land into that prison and they see these people? Remember, these people have not been charged. You pick up people and say, I believe you are the taxi man. And you put him in jail, and he's just there indefinitely.
Yeah. I mean, when I went to Guantanamo, as I said 4 times, it's surreal that you go in a military plane, it lands at a military base, you're transported by military, right? Your name is Nazim BAKSH. Immediately, you're brown-skinned, They know you're from, where are you from? Oh, I'm Canada, Canadian Broadcasting. Oh, but where are you from before, right? And expect India or Pakistan or something. Say Guyana, right from the Caribbean.
They didn't know where that was, though. That's to say the Caribbean.
Yeah, you say the Caribbean, Guyana, they might figure out, sort of the Caribbean. But even though Cuba is right there, it's the American base. And then you stay in bunkers. Media herded into bunkers, and you have your places where you can go and where you can't go. And you can't go to the lawyer section, for example, or the military personnel section, or you can't even go to a restaurant by yourself. You have to be transported all the time. And so when you go to court, you have to sign in, and it's a long security check. You can't bring a pen even or a recorder into the courtroom, much less your cell phone. None of that. But you don't see the prisoners until they take you to see the prisoners. Oh. And they take you in these golf carts, and you kind of drive by. But what we didn't see at that time, but what we know happens, was the degree of torture and sleep deprivation and extreme positions and waterboarding that was taking place at Guantanamo. Now we know what was going on behind the scene, and people have written books. Movies have been done. That movie about the Mauritanian guy who was there was horribly tortured in Guantanamo. And what people don't talk about as well is how many of the guards in Guantanamo became Muslims because they saw the character of the people who were brutalized, who were sleep deprived, who were malnourished, who were waterboarded, and still they prayed, they fasted in Ramadan, they kept their composure. As HASEEB said, they kept their patience. And many people, Muazzam Beg tells this great story. He says, I was online, I was talking to Muazzam Beg, was a British, he was detained and tortured in Guantanamo. And he said he was on a discussion recently, and there's this Muslim woman, white American, in hijab. So he's talking to her. She says, I was at Guantanamo. And he says, no, sister, there were no women at Guantanamo. There was approximately about 950 at peak men from across the world, mostly, who were at Guantanamo. And there's only been one conviction, and that conviction happened on American side, not in Guantanamo. There's still no conviction. There's still trials to happen. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and all of that. And she said, no, I was one of your guards. And she said, I was so inspired by you and others that I started reading the Quran, I started learning about Islam, and then I became Muslim. And so I met a couple of those people in stories that I've done. I've interviewed people who didn't outwardly appear to be Muslims, but were Muslims. And they were, again, inspired by what they saw and what they encountered. They even learned, Umar Khadr was 15 years old when they put him in Guantanamo, the Canadian, youngest detainee in Guantanamo. He memorized the entire Quran in his time. He's back in Canada. And the government of Canada was forced to settle its case against him. Why? Because it abandoned him, and it knew that the Americans were torturing him in Guantanamo, did nothing to get him out of that situation. So they give him $10.5 million.
He was a child.
He was a child, and he was detained. And so in contravention, when we talk about Gaza, we're seeing all the rules of international norms and standards thrown out of the door in Gaza, that there's no credibility in the international system anymore. You know this. You studied international relations. You've taught international relations. You know there's one time you can talk about laws, you can talk about process, you can talk about, the rights of oppressed, the rights of occupied people. There is nothing anymore. This is unveiled power that is taking place before our eyes, right? And so when we talk about Qadr, one of the aspects of Qadr is that God has absolute power, right? God has absolute power. You think you have power, but you don't have any power, right? And the stories in the Quran, Ad, Thamud, right? What does God say? You thought you had power. Mm-hmm. You thought you had power. The people of Ad built magnificent buildings, right? Prophet Hud came to them. I mean, I went to visit the grave of Prophet Hud in Yemen, in Hadramaut. And I mean, his grave is long. They were big people. They were like 20 feet tall. And they built magnificent palaces. And a wind came and washed everything away. Everything got destroyed.
HASEEB, Akash?
Ramadan has started.
Yeah.
For us, for many people, not that are not Muslims, they ask me, how do you make out? How do you make out with this? I said, it's very simple for me. It's really easy. Some days I don't even eat for 2 days. You know, like I miss it. Like it doesn't bother me. You know, as it is right now, I do 1 meal per day. I do intermittent fasting. It's good for my body. But the people in Gaza, they don't even have food on a daily basis before Ramadan. Gentlemen, could you put it into perspective? What is it that these people are going through, and how you know they're going to go into Ramadan and even do better? They're going to say, well, we don't even want food now. We don't even need the food. You know, we're going to go through, put into perspective what they're going through right now.
HASEEB?
Without you know, on a daily basis, without food.
No,
When you studied philosophy with me, you believe that after what happened with in Germany, when we looked at the Holocaust, HASEEB, you would ever believe the world would ever believe what they see now? What is happening in Gaza is pure, unadulterated
Freddie, I
genocide.
don't think anybody would have believed that this would have ever happened, because this is why UN was set up. This is why all of these, you know, international law was developed.
20,000
all of that,
women and children?
that is to end genocide. That is to bring an end to genocide. That is to bring an end to these kind of major mass atrocities against a people or part of a people, the annihilation of a part of a people. And Gaza has been going on for, you know, according to Khalidi, it's 100 years of war against Gaza.
Oh yes, you brought this
and you're
back for
talking
me.
from 1917 to 2017, and now we are, you know, over that. And you know, this is a colonial, as we all know, it's a colonial enterprise. This is something that we inherited from the colonial days. And so all of the colonial powers who were involved in that. And you know, like you said, interestingly, Germany, you know, of all people, but I think it's a defect. It's a defect.
It's a defect
from the Holocaust. Definitely.
I think the Germans have a psychic problem.
It's a psychological problem.
You committed genocide twice. You think you'll be the first country
to start
in the entire world to say no. Genocide. When we see genocide, we recognize it. I think Germany has probably gone down in the whole eyes of the world.
Yes, and this is why Global South is having so much respect in the world today. Because South Africa learned from the lesson of apartheid. And from Mandela until now, Desmond Tutu and everybody else coming down to the foreign minister of South Africa and the president, they stood up for Gaza because they know, and they're always saying, this is the worst form of apartheid. This is the worst form of occupation. This is the extremity of any kind of atrocity that is going to be committed in the world. And you know, this is what is happening in Gaza. And so to deny that there is genocide, and to, worse than that, to justify genocide and support genocide, you know, it shows, like Nazim said, the total breakdown of international law, of the international system. Where do you turn now for justice? Where do the Gazans go? Oslo failed, everything failed. Israel violated all of the laws of international relations, international humanitarian relations, everything.
Its prime minister is a criminal.
Yes, and you have world criminals ruling occupied Palestine. I don't say Israel, it's really occupied Palestine. Because before 1948, you know, where was Israel? You know, this is Palestine, a land of people, for a land of you know, like they would say, a land without people for a land for people without land, which is a total lie.
But still, there is a state of Israel, and we have to recognize it because the international community has recognized it is the occupied territory that we're
Yes,
talking
Israel has a right to exist. We need to say that.
Certainly, but
its leadership right now should be in jail. Should be in front of the international.
Interestingly, I want to get back to Akash's question because I think it's a really good question. When I interviewed Netanyahu in 1999 for the CBC, he was prime minister then, but he was power hungry. He was sort of a completely arrogant man.
The man's a megalomaniac.
He's a megalomaniac, and I mean just one example that I sort of remember in my days at university in Toronto was that Edward Said at one time wanted to have a face-to-face discussion with him, the Palestinian intellectual, right, and a philosophical man.
Yeah, his book Orientalism is
Orientalism,
the best on colonial life,
covering Islam and the question of Palestine, which is even better than that book that Khalidi has written. And he wouldn't even be in the same building with Edward Said. And then when people asked, why wouldn't you be in the same building? He says, these people want to kill me. I mean, and now, at that time he was ambassador. Now he's the prime minister. And I mean, what he's carrying out there, Gallant, all of them, Benny Gantz, who's now in the United States because the United States needs somebody to talk to, and Netanyahu's not talking to. He's not talking to even the people who are funding him and giving him the weapons that he's dropping on Gaza, right? It coming from where?
And the reason why he's doing that, he say when all is said and done, they support us. We the Jewish nation. He knows what he's doing. Knows he has the support of...
Going back to the question that you raised, which is about fasting. So Muslims, they have times when they travel, for example, they're absolved from fasting. They can make up their fast, or sickness, or ill health, and so on and so forth, that they're exempt from fasting. One would say, looking at the situation in Gaza, you have... I think the last time I checked, it was about 150 mosques that have been completely demolished.
Yeah, all the schools have gone.
Schools have gone,
hospitals have gone,
hospitals have gone. But 140 mosques, and they built beautiful mosques. Like, if you ever been to Gaza and the West Bank, they're beautiful. It's not like our mosque, or in the village mosque, which is great because it's humble, it's simple. It came out of the plantation system here in Guyana and the rice and sugar industry. But these are magnificent buildings that houses thousands of people. HASEEB has seen some of these buildings. Even the most meager one is beautiful. They're beautiful. Imagine 150 of them completely destroyed, right? And so people are, and it's winter. Winter time is coming to an end now. But they pray out in the open, bare feet. Sometimes they have nothing to pray at, and so they're going to still be observing Ramadan, right? With prayers at night. Whether they're able to fast during the day, I don't know. We don't know yet, but they're trying to bring a ceasefire. There's food shortages in there. The Americans are dropping, airlift on Gaza, on the coast there in the Mediterranean. But I mean, you have to think Gaza. What is Gaza? Gaza is if you go at Stabroek Market and then you go along the East Coast to Success, and then take a line and draw Success, use the Demerara River as the Mediterranean, and go all the way. 42 kilometers, and you're at the airport, you're Timeri Airport. So Timeri Airport, along this way and along that way, and back to the coast. That's Gaza for you, right? 2.2 million people, 80% of them displaced.
But
right?
I want to carry this program, I want to hear it too. People, there's just death and destruction in Gaza. And do you know the Sri Lankans? The Sri Lankans have now canceled permanent visa for 5,000 Ukrainians who are holidaying in Sri Lanka because of some racist thing they had. They had a party and they marked only whites. People are living and enjoying life in Kiev. And the people who are supporting genocide want us to criticize Putin. I would like to ask the two of you, in a lighter philosophical note, could you imagine what Putin says to himself when he's dressing in the morning and he's shaving or he's combing his hair, to see what is happening in Gaza. And he must have said, well, let me see what they can tell me of what Russia is doing. I want to ask you what you think Putin is doing right now as he see what is happening in Gaza and how the EU, Canada, the US are all behind a state that's committing genocide and telling Putin, get out of the people's place. What do you think is going to...
So in order to speak about moral questions, you have to have some credibility. When you don't have credibility, you can't speak, right? The Western media has completely failed. CNN, BBC, CBC, all of these medias have failed, right? The first casualty of war is the truth. The truth. And I as a journalist whose job it's to tell the truth, I don't even know what's going on anymore. Like, how do you cover a situation where you're just buying wholesale what Israel is feeding to the public, and now they're doing fact checking. BBC has a fact checking department. CNN has a fact checking department. CBC definitely, I know, has a fact checking department. You cannot believe anything.
No, you missed out one.
What?
The New York Times have a fact checking department, and the people that do the fact checking have serious connections to Israel.
Exactly, and then they had to withdraw one of the major stories and investigations that they did.
The editor-in-chief of the New York Times has a stationery store in Israel. His store sells stationery in Israel. And his father was on the board of a pro-Israel organization named Camera. And he is on the board too, and he's the editor of the New York Times.
So for Muslims, Freddie, right, we have to be very, very clear how we speak. I don't know what's going through Putin's mind when he wakes up in the morning. But what I do know is that he's a murderer as well. And so we, as Muslims, we are very clear. I'm not on anybody's side. I'm not... do you see any stripes?
But I am saying when he looks in the mirror...
But he's seeing hypocrisy.
He's saying, these people are telling me I am an invader.
Yeah.
So I want to make the point that, of course, Putin's a dictator. He has no right to invade a sovereign country. But he's saying, what are they telling me? I am not doing anything wrong. Who are they to tell me what I'm doing?
Yeah, no, I mean, he might have a point. But it doesn't mean he's not a murderer. It doesn't mean he's not.
He's an invader. He's a murderer. And he's an oligarch.
But if Biden is genocide Biden, then Putin is genocide Putin, right? I mean, that's just the way the world is. I'm not going to mince my words when it comes to Modi. I'm not going to mince my words when it comes to General Burhan in Sudan, or Dagado, or whatever his name is, General Hemeti, who don't forget, 13,000 people have been killed in less than just about a year of war in Sudan. That's a country of 4 to 5 million people. Millions have been displaced. 7 million have been displaced, in Sudan, right? The corruption that's going on in Pakistan. I'm not here to take sides.
Modi's anti-Muslim anyway.
Yeah, there you go.
But the sheer, I think the point is the sheer hypocrisy.
Yeah,
has been laid
That's
bare.
what I was saying about Putin.
So here you are giving Ukraine weapons to fight the invasion, and here you're supplying weapons to the invader. To the colonizer, to the occupation forces.
Canada opened its door to Ukrainian refugees. Where did they put them? In nice hotels, in nice quarters, to give them bonus, to give them, a check. Here's thousands of dollars.
I really had like that guy when he first started shooting.
When you have African refugees coming and they herd them into they herd them into these poor little ghettoized, drug-infested areas of Toronto, but the Ukrainians get to go to Mississauga, which is on the outskirts and it's like really nice and proper, and they get nice hotels and good rooms. That's the kind of racism that we talk about.
UK sending them to, not one refugee will be on that plane to Rwanda from the UK. No. Not one Ukrainian refugee. That Rwanda thing is for non-white people. HASEEB.
Yes, so
how you feel?
The hypocrisy.
Putin is shaving a communist here.
So he looks like a saint when it comes to what's happening in Gaza.
But
You
do
know,
you realize? I think Putin thinks he's a czar. I don't think Putin has any intention of tolerating opposition, and Putin has invaded a sovereign country. But Gaza has given Putin more leeway, and the West cannot see that Putin is going to win because of what they have done in Gaza.
Yeah.
Akash?
At the heart of Islam, and it is mentioned when the angel appeared, we had this conversation to the Prophet ﷺ, and he says, "Tell me, what is Iman? What is Iman?" One of the things that he mentioned was, well, amongst other things that cover the resurrection. And you mentioned that it's just a film, as someone said, it's just a membrane that separates us from this world to paradise.
Yeah.
They're going to paradise. But where do we fit into all of this? As someone said on this program the other day, he says, well, how do we fit in? What is in your heart for those people? How do you feel in your heart? Because it ultimately is the heart that will speak on the day of judgment. How does your heart feel about this? Gentlemen, what is our moral responsibility at this time towards those people?
Well, this is why I'm on the show. I mean, I feel like I agree with you. We have a moral responsibility to speak and speak the truth, and to, you know, like I'm in the Caribbean now. I'm in Guyana. When I see people like Andrew Holness, you know, from Jamaica, going and shaking hands with this murderer.
Holness? Where was that?
And yes, so recently, the Jamaican Prime Minister was in Israel meeting with Netanyahu, shaking his hand and saying, "You have our undivided support." When you have Ziggy Marley, one of the prominent, son of Bob Marley, the legendary Bob Marley. I mean, doing a concert for the occupying forces, what I called IOF, not IDF, but the Israeli Defense Force, which is the Israeli occupying force, and raising $60 million for them.
I didn't know Holness did that. I'm going to check it.
Yeah.
Because CARICOM wants an immediate ceasefire.
Yeah.
I didn't know Holness, but I'm not surprised. Jamaica has been having white leadership.
So I don't know whether there's something within our Rastafarian brothers' belief and so on that allows or compels them to support the state of Israel.
No. That's Ziggy Marley doing that on his own because he's married to a Jewish woman whose parents live in Israel.
But why does Andrew Holness do that? I'm just kind of like I heard, for example, in our friends in Trinidad, that we collaborate with on organizational level. He said recently that the evangelical Christian community in Trinidad, by and large, supports the state of Israel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And so I feel like, I'm not preaching to anybody. I think we have a moral responsibility because we have no power. We only have our relationship with our human beings, with our friends, and we have a spiritual dimension to our life that we need to have dialogue and talk to people in Guyana. I'm hoping that in Ramadan, products that are sold or imported from the state of Israel by Israeli company, people would not would sort of refrain from boycott them in Ramadan.
Boycott them generally.
Certain types of dates, for example, certain type of hummus. If you get those things in Guyana, I would think that people would say, okay, you know what, I'm not going to buy it. I don't know if there's any product search in this country that you can say, this comes from there and this doesn't come from there. I think people in this country drink way too much Pepsi and Coke.
People buy foreign things here all the time. We talk about it on this program. I write about it all the time. I do a daily column in the Chronicle and I write about it all the time.
I'm using to drink sugary drink the local sugary drink. Anyway, if you're going to get diabetic from a local product.
So if the Western people buying the Western thing, it's okay. But they buy things that are even more expensive. For example, DDL 1 liter box juice is 300. Nestle's is $9.90.
Wow.
And it has chemicals of God preservative. But HASEEB, I think it's something.
I wanted to talk about that because this is for us from a theological point of view. it's all about faith. It comes down to faith, like you said. Iman. And Iman is the springboard. This is from where everything comes. The patience, the resilience, the resignation, the submission to the will of Allah, and all of that goes back to the faith. And so Ramadan is about building that faith, strengthening that faith, developing that inner core within our being that would cause us to exemplify all of these beautiful qualities and to exemplify the Muslim character. And so this is why Ramadan is so integral and so important in the development of faith and development of what is called taqwa, which is a deep consciousness of God that governs our entire being, whether in private or in public. Our approach to issues on the world stage, our view of politics, our view of international law and international relations, it all goes back to that. And so Ramadan is about developing spiritual consciousness, and it's about also understanding the plight of others. Those who are facing injustices, those who are facing, we have the Gaza scenario, but you also have conflicts of this nature, all over the world. We are having very serious imbalances in economic imbalance, and poverty is in many countries. People can't live comfortably, due to inflation and so many other global issues as it relates to the imbalances in the economy. And so here we are as a Muslim nation worldwide, observing Ramadan, having the crisis of Gaza just before us. It's an impetus for us to see at whatever level, our individual community level, to try to work towards improving, enhancing the lives of human beings. And so here in Guyana, we are on the verge of, like we would always say, great economic prosperity. But then we have to have a program for the alleviation of poverty. We still have widespread poverty in our society. And those have to be addressed in a very systematic way in order to lift people out of poverty. Zakah and all of these things are there in our religion to help to alleviate poverty, to lift people out of poverty, so that you have a certain level of comfort living in the dunya. It doesn't say that we have to live in poverty because the akhirah is the hereafter is our goal. We have to strive for human development.
Let me ask both of you, what do you think is going to happen in the coming weeks? Do you think Israel is going to stop, or are they just going to keep killing those people in about another 2 months, and then that's it? They're dead and gone. Or do you think the Palestinians could be saved in the coming month?
Well, I mean, the situation is very bleak as we speak. I don't, by the time this program airs, it may be bleaker. So I don't want to stamp our discussion, which is happening a couple of days before. This was a recorded show, obviously. But the effort is to try and prevent or to get a ceasefire that is somewhat permanent before the start of Ramadan. Now we're at Ramadan. So if there's no ceasefire, there is no reason compelling Israel to stop out of the goodness of their heart, because they have not shown any goodness of any heart. They've not shown they had a heart even with the kind of destruction, death and destruction that has been going on for the last 5 months. We have 31,000 people dead and counting, right? By contrast, one of the great genocide that took place on European soil was the 100,000 Bosniaks, Muslims that were killed in Bosnia and Herzegovina between 1992 and 1993.
It was more in Rwanda.
Right, exactly. But 1992 and 1993, there was 100,000 killed, Bosniaks killed. that's 3 years, right? Including 10,000 in Srebrenica, right? 10,000 in Srebrenica, one fall. But 3 years, 100,000. With 5 months, and we're already over 30,000. So people who believe that this sort of genocide is not by comparison, if we get to 3 years in this situation with the same trajectory, that's over 300,000 people dead, much less the death and destruction. There's only 2.2 million people in Gaza, right? And so my prognosis of what's going to happen, they want Yahya Sinwar, they want him dead. They want to destroy Hamas. They've not managed to do that in 5 months. This is the 10th most powerful military in the world, and they can't get rid of Hamas. How are you going to get rid of Hamas? What is Hamas? They said Hamas staged the October 7th. There were 4 Palestinian groups, 4 in total, so 3 others, including Hamas. They didn't commit any rape. We know that now. They didn't commit any savagery. We know that it's wrong what they did, but they didn't commit any of that. Even Norman Finkelstein, who everybody thought was the craziest person, Norman Finkelstein is starting to sound sane. He says, I cannot, in the rightness of my mind, condemn Hamas. I will not do it. This is Norman Finkelstein, right? And so what will happen? I don't know. I'm just praying for the mercy of God, because the situation is completely unbearable. It's right now what's happening there is I don't see any hope for a ceasefire anytime soon. And whatever Israel wants, if the end is the extermination of all the Palestinian people, then this is something that the world is going to witness, and the scale of it is just going to be more horrendous.
Well, we gotta go.
The Israelis have made no secret of their intention. And it's clearly, it's about ethnic cleansing. It's about expelling the Palestinians. This is the ultimate Nakba. This is the opportunity to achieve the greater Israel, which is the complete. We can't forget what is happening on the West Bank. That's perpetual. So it's all about ethnic cleansing. It's about expulsion of the entire Palestinian population from Gaza, and to cleanse the West Bank.
Yeah.
So this is the goal, and they have the backing until up to recent. If I should use that, because this is what is in the public, we don't know what happens in the private sphere. But here is where we have the Americans now saying that they're calling for a temporary ceasefire.
Okay, gentlemen, we have to do this again. We definitely have to do this again. Akash, thanks for being with us here. HASEEB, thanks for being
so
here.
Much, Freddie.
Nizam Bash, I hope you have a fruitful return to Guyana. You have an enormous amount of experience in journalism, and I think Guyana could use you. HASEEB bought this Palestinian band for me to wear, and I'm happy I was wearing it this evening. Here it is, Palestine. So, and he bought this book for me. You're quite free to call me to have a borrow of it. As I normally say, catch you later, bye-bye. But before that, happy Ramadan, and we'll do a discussion on Gaza over and over again. On behalf of Nizam Bash, Nazim Bash, my friend HASEEB YUSUF, and our co-host Akash Prasad. Catch you later. Bye-bye.